Hey there, partner. Dust off your boots and say goodbye to freedom. Because tonight you're headed behind bars, Wild West style. No modern cell block, no inmate handbook, no rights really. Just a splintered wooden door, a rusty set of iron bars, and the deeply unsettling smell of body odor and old regret. Forget high-tech security and stainless steel toilets. This is the 1800s. Baby, where law enforcement is three guys with whiskey breath and itchy trigger fingers, and the only thing between you and a jailbreak is a padlock that hasn't worked right since Lincoln died. Your new address. A fly-infested box next to the saloon outhouse, and directly above Hell's waiting room. You're not just in jail, you're in a hastily built box designed more for holding livestock than human beings. And guess what? No one's checking on your mental health. No one's asking how you are coping. Your cellmate might be a murderer, might be a preacher, might be both. The only thing guaranteed is the lice. You'll sleep on a pile of straw that crackles when you move because something in it's still alive. You'll eat food that makes hardtack look gourmet, and you'll spend a lot of time staring at a wall, praying that the town judge is sober enough to remember which outlaw he is hanging tomorrow. Forget law and order. This is law and vibes. You're stuck in a box built for drunks, drifters, and the occasional outlaw who didn't run fast enough. There's no trial date, no lawyer, just time, long, hot, stinking time. So sit tight. Try not to breathe too deeply, and don't fall asleep with your boots off, because in here, survival isn't about toughness. It's about how long you can go without making eye contact with the guy chewing on his own belt. So how did you end up behind those rusty bars with a mouth full of dust and a cellmate named Skeeter who won't stop licking his fingers? Simple, bad luck, bad timing, and a worse sheriff. In the Wild West, getting arrested wasn't exactly a careful legal process. There was no Miranda warning. No one gently asked if you'd like a lawyer. You mouthed off in the saloon, looked too long at someone's sister, or happened to be walking past when a gunfight broke out, and boom, you're the culprit. Or at least, you're close enough for frontier justice. The sheriff, usually a half-retired gunslinger with a limp and a badge, he polished more than he enforced. His idea of due process is smacking you upside the head with the butt of his Colt and yelling, "Resistin'," while three deputies try to figure out which end of the rope goes around your neck. And if the sheriff doesn't get you first, the lynch mob might. Townsfolk didn't wait for a trial when they were angry and armed, which was basically always drunk with torches, pitchforks, and one guy who just really wants to use that new knot he learned. They drag you out of your bunk for justice, whether or not you'd even done anything. Guilt was optional. Spectacle was not. Assuming you survived the arrest and weren't hung by sunrise, you got tossed into jail like a sack of potatoes. Someone decided wasn't worth cooking. No paperwork. No process. Just a door slamming behind you and a muttered, "He'll keep till Monday." Spoiler, he probably won't. Your belongings? Gone, confiscated, or lost, depending on how honest the sheriff is. Your hat's on some deputy's head. Your revolver is now evidence. Your dignity? That's lying in the street next to the tooth you lost during the arrest. And you're now officially a guest of the county, which is a fancy way of saying no one's feeding you until they remember you're there. You sit in the dark, splinters in your back, dry blood on your shirt. You can still taste the sawdust and bile. The walls are sweating. Someone's snoring nearby. Someone else is laughing for no reason. And as you watch the rats fight over a crust of bread by your boot, you realize something chilling. You haven't even been sentenced yet. This is just pre-trial detention. Wild West style. No bail, no phone call. Just you, your regrets, and a ceiling beam that looks like it's already hung 4 men too many. And if you think this is bad, wait till you see where they actually put you. Welcome to the holding cell, the place they throw you before they decide whether to fine you, forget you, or hang you. If you thought being arrested was bad, wait until you meet your new home. It's not so much a cell as it is a wooden box that someone angrily nailed together during a heat stroke. No windows, one barred door, and about as much ventilation as a coffin, which, to be fair, is probably where you're headed next. The walls, rough timber, soaked in sweat, spit, and blood that no one's cleaned since the war. Which war? Any of them. Pick one. You lean against the wall and get a splinter the size of a toothpick in your back. You lean forward and someone sneezes blood on your neck. There's a bucket in the corner. You don't ask what it's for. You already know. Everyone knows. It's the toilet, the trash can, and occasionally the punching bag when a man's been in here too long and loses his grip on reality. There's no bed, just a floor that's either dirt, creaky planks, or sticky stone, depending on how advanced the jailhouse is and how many prisoners came before you. Answer: too many. If there's straw, congratulations. It's moldy flea, infested, and last week's inmate probably died on it, your roommates. A mixed bag of drunkards, outlaws, men who say they're innocent, and men who stopped caring either way. Someone's curled in a corner, whispering to their boots. Another guy's carving something into the floor with a nail, and keeps glancing at you like you're going to interrupt his masterpiece. Murder plan. There's no light except what trickles in from a crooked window down the hall. And that's only during the day. At night, it's pitch black. Every sound is amplified. Every cough sounds fatal. Every shuffle sounds armed. If the jailer remembers, he might bring you water in a dented tin cup that tastes like rust and regrets. If he doesn't, you lick condensation off the wall and try not to look too thirsty, because that invites conversations you don't want to have. And God help you if the sheriff's in a mood. Maybe he decides to throw someone else in. Maybe that someone else is twice your size and bleeding from 3 places. Maybe he doesn't like the way you breathe. Maybe now you're going to spend the night hoping he sleeps before you do. Time moves weird here. Minutes stretch. Hours drip like molasses, days blur. There's no clock, no calendar, just hunger, heat, and the smell of a man who hasn't bathed since horses were invented. But don't worry. This is just the beginning. They haven't even taken your boots yet. You are officially in, booked, maybe processed. Not really. But you are behind bars, which means one thing for sure: nobody's giving you fresh clothes. Forget the image of modern inmates shuffling around in matching orange jumpsuits like traffic cones with bad attitudes. In the Wild West, whatever you were wearing when they dragged you in is what you are still wearing now. And brother, it's not holding up your shirt torn, blood-stained, smells like old beef and regret. It might have started as white, but now it's a mysterious shade of cell grime, with pit stains that could qualify for statehood. Your pants are stiff with sweat and dirt. There is a tear near the knee that's spreading like gossip at a saloon. And your belt, gone confiscated. You're now holding your trousers up with sheer willpower and thigh tension. Your boots, still on miraculously, but they're wet from something you hope was water. One's missing a sole. The other squeaks like a dying mouse every time you shift. Taking them off means they might never come back on again. And out here, bare feet are a death sentence, even indoors. Underwear. Let's not talk about that. Let's just say it's there. Probably hats, coats, gloves, all stripped during the search, which was mostly just a deputy shaking you upside down like a coin purse, and keeping whatever didn't clatter too loudly. Your pocket watch gone? Your lucky knife gone? Your dignity? buried somewhere under a pile of straw and old chewing tobacco. There's no uniform, no laundry, no rotation of clean outfits. You sweat in what you bled in and sleep in what you defecated in. If you get lice, and you will, they're yours to keep. They'll even name themselves if you stay long enough. And if you think the jailer cares, think again. He hasn't changed clothes since last July and smells like he sleeps inside a whiskey barrel. You complain about the filth, and he just squints at you like you're speaking Martian. Then tosses you a rag so dirty it begs for exorcism. Prisoners sometimes swap clothes if one of them dies or gets hauled out. That's how you end up wearing pants 2 sizes too small and a vest with bloodstains. You're trying not to think about vintage outlaw chic, they call it. You call it a rash waiting to happen. In short, you're not dressed for prison. You're dressed for a slow unraveling of the human spirit. And the worst part, when they do finally drag you into the daylight, maybe for trial, maybe for something worse, you'll be wearing the same thing you've been rotting in for weeks, crusty, stained, and smelling like the bottom of a horse trough. Because in Wild West prison, what you wear isn't about fashion. It's about how much you can endure before your own clothes give up on you. You're filthy, hungry, and trying to figure out whether that itch on your neck is lice or just your nerves finally short-circuiting. Then the door creaks open. Boots stomp, chains rattle, and in comes the welcome committee, your new roommates. Say howdy. Wild West jails didn't separate prisoners by crime or temperament. They barely separated them by species, drunks, cutthroats, conmen, and people who just looked suspicious all got dumped into the same miserable room like poker chips in a losing hand. First come, first stink. Your first bunkmate, probably a guy named something like One-Eyed Cal or Toothless Jake. He doesn't talk much, but he does grin in a way that makes you immediately check your boots for a shiv. He's been here a while, you can tell, because he's built a nest in the corner out of rags, rat bones, and broken dreams. Then there's the twitchy one. Every cell has one. Won't sit still, won't sleep, keeps muttering about things that may or may not be real. Sometimes he laughs, sometimes he cries, sometimes he does both, in rhythm. You try not to make eye contact. That's how it starts. Don't worry. There's always a guy who thinks he's in charge. He's not. But he acts like he is, barking orders, bragging about what gang he ran with, or how many men he almost killed. He'll try to trade you for food, boots, or entertainment. He'll also be the first one to cry if there's ever an escape attempt. And let's not forget the quiet one. Sits in the corner, says nothing. Stares too much. You assume he's harmless until you catch him sharpening a spoon on a wall nail. He's saving that spoon. You don't ask why weapons. Oh, there are weapons. Not the kind you'd expect. Nothing fancy, just bits of bone, rusted nails, chunks of wood, maybe a belt buckle filed into a point. Anything can be a knife if you want it bad enough. And in here, everyone wants it bad enough. The jailers, they know, they don't care. As long as no one dies loudly, they let the inmates police themselves. Mutual respect, they call it. Outsourced murder, you call it. Fights break out constantly, over food, over space, over breathing too loud. Some end with bruises, some end with blood. One ends with a man getting a tooth, pulled using a boot, a brick, and blind optimism. There's no privacy, not even a corner to cry in. Every noise you make is heard. Every move you make is watched. The pecking order is established fast, predator, prey, and the people just trying to survive the week. This is your welcome. No handshakes, no orientation packets. Just a dozen filthy men crammed into a wooden box, testing your every twitch for weakness. You're not here to make friends. You're here to make it through the night. After just one night with your charming new roommates, Spoon Guy, Toothless Jake, and the man who keeps whispering to a rock, you start to realize something important. This whole place is barely standing. The jailhouse isn't a fortress, it's a shack, a rickety, poorly nailed together, termite-friendly box that someone probably built after 5 beers, and a threat from the mayor. It leans literally. The floor tilts just enough that anything round, buttons, marbles, eyeballs, rolls to the same corner. No one sits there anymore. That's where the smell lives. The walls are made of wood, but not the good kind. These planks are warped, splintered, and spaced so far apart you can hold conversations with people outside, which is awkward when you are explaining how you're innocent while also scratching yourself raw. Iron bars, technically yes, but they're so rusted you could probably chew through them with enough desperation and 2 teeth. One's already bent from the last guy who tried to escape. He didn't make it. But the bar still remembers him, shaped like the letter L, and forever sticky for reasons nobody discusses. It drips during the day, it drips at night. And if you ask where the water's coming from, the jailer just shrugs and says, "Ghosts? Maybe." Real helpful. Doors don't shut all the way. Locks are more of a suggestion than a security measure. Some don't even click anymore. They just hang there like a drunk uncle trying to tell a story. You could probably break out if you tried, but then what? You're barefoot, hungry, and the sheriff owns a faster horse than you again. And let's not forget the jailhouse wildlife, termites in the walls, mice in the pantry if you're lucky, rats in the pantry if you're not, scorpions in your boots, spiders in your hair. There's a raccoon that lives under the porch and watches the prisoners like he's waiting for his cue. You start to suspect he runs the place. There's no real security system, no guards pacing the halls, just a drunk deputy who sits outside snoring in a rocking chair, holding a shotgun he only pretends to load. If a fire broke out, half the inmates would die in the smoke, the other half would break out during the chaos, and the sheriff would blame it all on bandits. But here's the twisted part: no one escapes. Why? Because this wooden trap still works. It keeps you too hungry, too tired, and too half dead to make a run for it. You are not behind bars because they're strong. You're here because you're weak. And they know it. The jail doesn't need to be solid. It just needs to outlast you. After a long day of being ignored, insulted, and possibly bled on, you might be hoping for at least one comfort: a bed, something soft, something horizontal, something that doesn't smell like it was dragged through a swamp and then set on fire. Hope is adorable because in the Wild West jailhouse, a bed is whatever patch of misery you claim before someone else does. First come, least infected. The lucky cells might have straw ticks, thin, lumpy sacks, filled with straw that hasn't seen daylight since it was last used as a horse's lunch. They offer zero support and a buffet of bugs. You lie down thinking, at least it's off the ground, and immediately get bit on the neck by something with 6 legs and attitude. Most of the time, you're sleeping on floorboards. They're uneven, cracked, and warped by generations of spills no one cleaned up. One plank creaks like a dying cow every time you shift. Another one's loose and keeps pinching your thigh. You learn fast not to sleep too close to the bucket corner. That's not water. You're smelling if you're extra unlucky. No floorboards at all. Just dirt. Cold, damp, unforgiving dirt. You make a nest out of your coat. Maybe curl around your boots to keep them from being stolen. One guy tried using old newspapers as a pillow, woke up with ink on his face that spelled out wanted. Don't even think about blankets, there are none. If you're freezing, your only options are a shiver until you pass out, or Spoon, the nearest warm body, and pray he doesn't wake up swinging. No shame in it. Everyone breaks eventually. Even the guy with face tattoos and a reputation for biting ears. Privacy? Nope. If you snore, 10 guys will tell you loudly. If you talk in your sleep, someone might write it down and use it against you later. And if you cry at night, which you will, you'll do it quietly into your straw pillow, hoping no one hears the sound of a soul leaking out. And let's not forget the fleas. They're the only permanent residents here. You can't see them, but you feel them biting, crawling, commuting between prisoners like tiny sadistic nomads. You'll scratch until your skin breaks, then scratch some more because it's the only sensation you still have control over. Eventually you'll pass out. Not because you're comfortable, but because exhaustion wins. You'll sleep in short, twitchy bursts, jerking awake at every cough, creak, and fart. And when morning comes, if it comes, you'll wake up stiffer, smellier, and more convinced than ever that the real punishment in this jail isn't time. It's the mattress that actively wants you dead. You can hear the coughing, the snoring, the muttering. You can feel the cold, the fleas, the straw scratching places no straw should reach. But the thing you notice first, and never stop noticing, is the smell. Wild West jails didn't have ventilation systems. They had walls that trapped heat, breath, and despair like a barrel traps rainwater. And over time, all that human misery simmers. It stews. It festers. You're not just smelling one thing, you're smelling everything. All at once. Start with sweat. Not normal. After a long day sweat. No, this is weaponized body odor. It seeps from every pore of every man who hasn't bathed in weeks. It clings to fabric, to wood, to air itself. You breathe in, and it coats your throat like spoiled syrup. There is a guy 2 cells down whose stench has developed depth. You can smell what he ate last month. It was fish, bad fish. Then there's urine, the bucket in the corner. It's full. It's always full. Overflowing if it's a particularly crowded week. The stench wafts out in invisible waves, smacking you in the face every time someone shifts and stirs it up. One guy tried to kick the bucket over in a tantrum. He was not popular after that. Rot is next, moldy food, moldy straw, possibly moldy people. Someone in here is missing a toe, and no one's entirely sure when it came off, or where it went. The walls sweat moisture from some unknown source, and something under the floor smells like it used to breathe. No one's gone looking layered. Into all of this is the sour tang of vomit, because at some point, someone always pukes, whether it's from spoiled beans, bad water, or sheer dread. It's coming up, and once it hits the floor, it stays there. Forever. Just another sticky note in the jailhouse guest book. Tobacco smoke. Chewing spit alcohol breath. Pick your poison. It's in the air. Men who can't smoke chew. Men who can't chew spit. You'll find dried tobacco wads stuck to beams like brown leeches and expectorated puddles pooling in corners that no mop has ever touched. Probably because there is no mop. And then there's the unidentifiable, a sharp, sour, almost metallic scent that seems to live in the cracks of the cell itself. Maybe it's blood, maybe it's fear, maybe it's whatever's been crawling in and out of the walls. Since before this place even had a sheriff. Eventually you'll get used to it. Not because it goes away, but because your brain gives up and decides this is your life now. This is what air smells like. You'll even stop gagging when you eat, but you'll never forget it. Not even years later in a clean bed with fresh sheets. Because once you've smelled Wild West jail, part of you never smells anything else again. After a few days stewing in that cocktail of rot, piss, and personal failure, your senses go numb until the unmistakable scent of burnt beans and disappointment wafts through the bars. It's food time calling it. Food is generous. It's more of a nutritional ceasefire between you and starvation. The jail doesn't feed you because they care. They feed you because corpses are paperwork. And even that's only if the sheriff remembers it's feeding day. He usually doesn't the menu. Beans. That's it. Always beans. Sometimes they're cold, sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're soupy. Sometimes they're just a hardened lump, like someone tried to sculpt a turd and gave up halfway. They're dumped into a dented tin bowl or ladled straight onto your hands, depending on how many dishes were borrowed or used as weapons that week. Alongside the beans is usually a slice of bread, a term loosely applied to something flat, dry, and so stale it crunches when you bite it. It tastes like sawdust and sadness. You eat it anyway. Sometimes you even thank the deputy, though you're really just trying to convince him not to forget you tomorrow. Protein. Occasionally there's meat if you're lucky, or if the town butcher donated something suspicious. Could be rat, could be squirrel. Might be beef that went off 3 days ago and got reheated for plausible deniability. You ask what it is, and the cook just winks. You eat it faster. Vegetables. Not unless you count the onion peel stuck to your bread. One time there was a carrot. Everyone stared at it like it was a miracle. The man who got it cried. We're not sure if it was joy or scurvy catching him off guard. As for drinks, water from a barrel out back covered with a lid that doesn't quite close. There's always something floating in it. Usually a leaf, sometimes a bug. Once, what looked like a human tooth. You close your eyes and drink anyway. Hydration matters, even when it tastes like the inside of a boot. Meal times are chaos. You line up if there's a line. If not, you shove your way forward and hope the guy behind you doesn't have a shank made from a soup spoon. Food is power. You eat fast, guard your plate, and never ever turn your back on the room. And when it's over, you sit back on your flea-ridden tick, licking bean paste from your fingers and wondering if that smell in your bowl was seasoning or mold. It doesn't matter, you're full, for now. And in this place, a full belly is as close to hope as you're going to get. You've choked down your beans, chewed your bread into something resembling food. But now your mouth's dry, your lips are cracking, and that weird salty taste in the back of your throat. That's not flavor. It's dehydration, cowboy. It's time for water. Or at least something that used to be water before the barrel grew a personality. In a proper world, you'd get fresh, clean water in jail. You get a dented tin cup passed down from 4 other men who all have very different definitions of hygiene. It is slick with sweat, maybe grease, maybe worse. You don't ask. You just hold it steady and hope the deputy pouring into it doesn't miss, or spit in it. Both have happened. The source of the water is a barrel tucked behind the jailhouse, baking in the sun, and slowly transforming into something that should probably be registered as a biohazard. Rain fills it. So do bugs. Occasionally a bird bathes in it once. Something swam in it. The deputy called it natural flavoring. You drink it anyway, you have to. Even if it tastes like old wood, iron rust and barn runoff, it's gritty, it's warm, it smells faintly like mildew and regret. But if you don't drink it, your head spins and your tongue turns into beef jerky. So down the hatch it goes, grit and all. If the barrel runs low, the refill process is whatever bucket the deputy can fill from the nearest well, or worse, the creek. You hope it's upstream of the cattle, it never is. You can smell the difference sometimes when they're really feeling generous, or someone's died recently, they'll bring out coffee. Don't get excited, it's not good. It's black, bitter, and strong enough to take the paint off a barn, but it's hot. And hot means hope. It means your hands stop shaking. It means for 5 minutes you remember what warmth feels like. You savor it, even if it tastes like it was filtered through a horse blanket. Even if the cup has a suspicious chip. Even if you're not sure it's actually coffee and not just boiled bark, it's better than barrel juice. Of course, sharing is a whole other problem. You get your cup, then guard it like it's gold. One prisoner tries to swap his half-empty cup for yours. Another guy drinks his too fast, then just stares at you while you sip, slow and careful, like you're making love to it. You are, in a way, you never really feel clean here, inside or out. But that cup of water, filthy, suspect, barely drinkable, is survival. You drink it, you pray it stays down, and you thank whatever dusty gods are watching over you. Because in this jail, clean water isn't a right, it's a miracle. Let's not dance around it. You've eaten the beans, you've drunk the barrel water. Now it's time for the inevitable relief. And in the Wild West jailhouse, that's when the true horror begins. There's no bathroom, no plumbing, no outhouse pass. Just a single bucket shoved into the darkest, saddest corner of the cell. They call it the necessary. But nothing about it is necessary or humane, or even remotely contained. It's made of dented tin or cracked wood, sometimes both. It's half full or half empty, depending on your outlook of things you'd rather not think about, but are now forced to confront, visually, aromatically, and existentially. There's no lid, no privacy, no dignity. Just you, a cell full of strangers, and the worst performance of your life. Using the bucket is a ritual. First, you announce your intentions, not because it's polite, because if you don't, someone will be sitting too close and take it personally. Then, you try to hold your balance while crouching over a container that has absolutely no interest in staying upright. One false move, and it's everyone's problem. There's no toilet paper, of course not. You use what you have, old cloth, newspaper scraps, or when things get desperate, a handful of straw and a short prayer. One guy used a playing card once. He never looked at the Queen of Hearts the same way again. And heaven help you if the bucket overflows. It happens a lot, especially during a long weekend or a forgetful deputy shift. At that point, it becomes a shared crisis. Someone kicks it, someone slips in it, someone blames you, you all suffer. There are stories of buckets spilling during fights, or being used in fights. One poor soul got knocked out cold with his own waste. He woke up smelling like the devil's armpit and with the nickname Buckhead. It stuck. The smell, by the way, never leaves. It becomes a part of the air. A musky, sour presence that follows you from corner to corner. You breathe through your mouth. You try to meditate. You fantasize about soap like it's a lost love. There's no schedule for emptying it. The jailer comes by when he remembers or when the stench makes his mustache curl. He empties it somewhere behind the building, probably near the same barrel your water came from. You don't ask questions, you just nod. Thankful it's not your turn. Some prisoners refuse to use it. Out of pride, out of trauma, out of pure denial. They hold it in until they can't, and then suffer the consequences, usually in front of everyone. After that, the bucket looks a lot more appealing. You think you've hit rock bottom, then you realize you're still sharing a corner with 6 men and a communal container of human suffering. And just like that, the beans don't seem worth it anymore. If the jail is hell, then the sheriff is the devil who occasionally forgets where he put the pitchfork. He's the man with the badge, the keys, and a half-finished bottle of something flammable tucked into his desk drawer. Around here, the sheriff isn't just the law. He's the entire legal system. Arresting officer, jailhouse manager, judge, jury, and if he's feeling sentimental, grief counselor. He's usually an ex-gunslinger with a limp, a squint, and the moral compass of a sleeping raccoon. The badge might be crooked, the shirt's always stained, the belt squeaks when he walks. And not because it's new, but he carries himself with the kind of authority that comes from having once shot a man for stealing a chicken. And the town respected him more for it. You don't know what kind of sheriff you're getting each day. Some days he's calm, offers you water, maybe even a cigarette if he's in a good mood and you didn't spit on the floor. Other days he's hungover, angry, and itching to practice his backhand on someone whose name he forgot. He doesn't follow protocol, because there isn't any. If you ask for your rights, he'll laugh. If you ask for a lawyer, he'll laugh harder. And if you ask what you're charged with, he'll either make something up or shout. You know what you did, whether you do or not. Justice out here is personal. If the sheriff likes you, you might get out in a day. If he doesn't, you'll be eating beans and nightmares for weeks before someone remembers you exist. Sometimes he forgets to file your name. There are stories of prisoners who sat in a cell for months, simply because no one told him they were still there. He also plays therapist, the reluctant kind. He might sit outside your cell late at night, half drunk, and start telling you about his ex, wife, his horse, or the time he almost moved to California, but didn't because that damn cactus business fell through. You nod, you agree. You become his emotional support. Criminal deputies, usually picked for their ability to stand upright, hold a rifle, and avoid vomiting near the sheriff's desk. None of them are paid well. Most don't last more than a month. One made the mistake of saying due process and hasn't been seen since. But make no mistake, the sheriff is the sun your miserable little jailhouse world orbits around. He decides what you eat when you breathe, and whether you'll ever see the sky again. You don't have to like him, you just have to survive him. Time doesn't move in a Wild West jail. It stretches, it drags, it hangs in the air like smoke from a fire that no one bothered to put out. And the longer you're in that cell, the more you realize it's not the rats or the stench or the cold stew that's going to kill you. It's the waiting. There's nothing to do. No books, no cards, no friendly games of checkers, unless someone manages to scratch a board into the dirt and use buttons for pieces. You sit, you stare, you think. Then you try not to think. Because the more you think, the more you remember where you are and how long you might be here. Some prisoners pace, step after step, back and forth, wearing grooves into the floor that look more like desperation than movement. Others just lie there, eyes open, counting the ceiling beams or whispering to people who aren't there anymore, or maybe never were conversation. Maybe, if your cellmates aren't psychopaths or snorers, but small talk in jail isn't uplifting. You learn what diseases they have, what crimes they allegedly committed, and which part of their body still hurts from the last fight. Nobody talks about dreams. Everyone talks about regret. Every sound becomes a major event. Footsteps down the hall. You all look up. Could be food. Could be freedom. Could be the Undertaker. Either way, it's something a bird out. A miracle, a sneeze, a threat, a fart, a declaration of dominance. Some guys go quiet. Not from peace, but because their minds just detach. They sit in the corner, eyes glazed, lips moving without sound. They've either found some kind of mental escape, or they're slowly getting eaten alive from the inside. Insomnia is the rule. The cell's never dark enough, never quiet enough, and the nightmares don't wait for sleep anyway. You drift off only to wake up thinking you're somewhere else. Home, a saloon, anywhere but here, until that smell hits your nose and reality punches you right in the throat. The worst part, you never know how long you'll be there. No court date, no schedule, no warning, just endless. Identical days strung together by bean dinners, flea bites, and existential dread. You try to count time in meals or bowel movements, neither is reliable. Eventually you stop asking the sheriff for updates. You stop asking the deputies for help. You stop talking altogether, unless it's to mutter, "Still here." When someone new arrives and asks how long you've been in, that's when you know you're sinking. Not fast, not loud, just slowly being pulled under by silence and stink and the sheer weight of nothing. Because the Wild West didn't need solitary confinement, it had boredom. And that was enough to break even the toughest man. Think the boredom's bad, just wait until you mess up. Because if the Wild West jailhouse had one thing worse than the food and the fleas, it was punishment. And they didn't need fancy cells or long court hearings to hand it out. Just a short temper, a length of rope, and someone to watch. Let's start with the chains. If you got mouthy, violent, or just looked like trouble, they'd slap iron cuffs on your ankles and hook you to the floor or the wall like a stubborn mule. No trial, no paperwork, just a quick hold still and the clank of cold metal against bone. You'd shuffle around, dragging your own shame like a broken wagon wheel, sleeping with one leg chained to a nail, dreaming of the time you could scratch your nose without asking permission. Then there were the whippings. If you stole food, picked a fight, or said something clever at the wrong time, you'd find yourself bent over a rail with your shirt torn off and a belt, or worse, cracking across your back. Didn't matter if you were guilty. All that mattered was someone saw it, and someone wanted to remind the rest of the cell what could happen. The punishment wasn't private. It was loud, public, and painfully effective. Some sheriffs even kept a wall of shame. Literally a splintery plank where they'd carve or write the names of repeat offenders, failed escapees, or anyone who screamed too much during a whipping. Sometimes they'd hang your clothes up there like a trophy. One guy's hat stayed on the wall for weeks after he tried to run. No one ever saw the man again, but his blood-stained brim served as a warning more convincing than any sermon. For some, punishment wasn't physical. It was deprivation. No food for a day, no water, no blanket during a cold snap. They'd let the cells stew in silence while one man starved, and the others were told, "This is what happens." There's nothing quite like eating stale beans while listening to someone else beg for a crust of bread 10 feet away. And if the sheriff was feeling particularly biblical, he might use the stocks. Yes, those wooden head and hand traps they used on the town drunk or the loud-mouthed preacher. Sometimes they'd set them up inside the jail. Other times out front, so every passerby got to watch you drool on your own shirt in the sun for 8 hours straight. You learn quick in jail there are rules, even if they change daily, even if no one tells you until it's too late. And punishment here isn't about justice. It's about control. Pain keeps men quiet, shame keeps them still. And just when you think it can't get worse, someone whispers about an escape plan. After a few weeks of sleeping on straw, eating sadness, and wondering whether that boil on your leg has a name, something dangerous starts to grow in your cell. Hope, not the clean, sunlit kind of hope. No, this is the filthy, half-crazed kind. The kind that whispers in your ear when you're lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at a loose brick and thinking, maybe, just maybe, that's my way out. Because in the Wild West, escaping jail wasn't just an idea. It was practically a tradition. The place was built like a barn and maintained like a pigsty. Bars were bent, locks were rusted, walls were more symbolic than structural. You didn't need a miracle. You just needed a bad deputy and a little time. Most escape attempts started with the classics, hacksaws, smuggled in by a sympathetic friend, a bribe-paid prostitute, or in one famous case, the bread. Someone baked a hacksaw blade right into a loaf and passed it through the bars like a Sunday offering. Took the guy 2 weeks to cut through the bars. He got caught on the last one, and the sheriff made him eat the rest of the bread. Others went the greased up route, stripped down, Smear yourself with lard, spit, or something worse, and try to slip between the bars like a desperate eel. Most got stuck halfway, flailing and naked, looking less like a free man and more like a pig being born. The rest just knocked themselves unconscious on the window frame. Some went low-tech digging. With spoons, bones, or bare hands, they'd claw at the floor, shoving dirt under the straw, and praying no one noticed the rising ground level. One guy made it out under the wall, straight into the sheriff's pig pen. The pigs weren't thrilled. Neither was the sheriff. And then there were the inside jobs. Bribing a guard to look the other way, unlocking a door that was accidentally left ajar, or convincing a drunk deputy that you were due to be released that day. It worked more than it should have. Paperwork was non-existent. Most jails ran on memory, spite, and hangovers. Of course, every successful escape came with 10 failures. Guys who tried to fake illness, then got thrown in the latrine shed. Guys who stole keys, only to realize they didn't know which one fit. One fella even tried to punch his way through a wall, left a dent, broke both hands. When a breakout did happen, it was chaos. Siren just yelling. The sheriff stumbling out half-dressed, shooting into the sky while deputies tripped over each other trying to find their boots. The jail went on lockdown, which mostly meant adding a second lock and watching the prisoners slightly more often. But even when escapes failed, they gave the rest of the cell something vital: entertainment. And for a moment, even a taste of freedom by association. Because in this place, sometimes the best you could hope for was seeing someone else run. After a failed escape attempt, or even a successful one that landed you right back in the same cell, smelling slightly more like pig manure, you start to accept the reality you're not getting out without help. And that's when you start hoping for visitors. Now, don't go expecting long lines and glass booths. This ain't a federal facility with check, in desks and waiting rooms. A visitor here just strolls up to the bars, maybe nods to the sheriff if he's awake, and starts talking. That's it, privacy. Non-existent. The entire cell listens in. Sometimes they even rate the conversation afterward. Most common visitor, the preacher. He shows up once a week, or whenever someone's about to swing. Dressed in black, Bible under one arm, breath like peppermint and guilt. He's not here to save you. He's here to remind you that it's too late. He quotes scripture while eyeing your soul like it's already half. Charred, you nod along, say amen, and pray he leaves before he starts the fire, and brimstone bit again. Then there's the prostitute, usually arriving in a cloud of perfume strong enough to mask the jailhouse stink for about 6 glorious seconds. She's not here to preach. She's here to comfort. If the sheriff's in a good mood and looks the other way, you might get a few minutes behind the curtain. No one asks what happens back there. Everyone knows what happens back there. And if she brings food, she's an angel. Doesn't matter if it's cold biscuits or a single bite of dried apple. You'd trade your soul for that apple. Sometimes family comes. A brother, a cousin, maybe even a wife, if you didn't leave on too bad of terms. They stand outside the bars, looking at you like you've aged a decade. Maybe they bring you a blanket. Maybe they just bring shame. Either way, they rarely come back. And then there's the mythical creature known as the guy who might actually bail you out. Could be a friend, could be an employer, could be a stranger who likes your mustache and believes in second chances. He walks in, talks to the sheriff, haggles over a fine, and for one brief, shining moment, you think you're getting out. Most of the time, he walks out shaking his head, but when he does pull out the coins, hands them over, signs your name, and says, "He's coming with me," you swear the heavens open, even if he's just dragging you off to work a mining debt. It still beats the bucket and the beans. Visitors don't stay long, they never do. But after days of silence, rats and whispers in the dark, a human voice from outside reminds you that the world still exists, and you used to be part of it. Even if now, you mostly smell like you were buried in it. So your visitor didn't bring a hacksaw, a bribe, or a miracle. Instead, he brought something almost worse, a court date. You're going to trial now. That might sound like good news. Your shot at justice, a chance to clear your name, maybe even walk free. But out here in the Wild West, a trial is just a performance, and the script's been written in whiskey and backroom, handshakes long before you showed up. The courtroom is usually just the sheriff's office with more chairs, or the back of the saloon, swept up and rearranged to look official. There's no jury box, no stenographer, no fancy robes. The judge wears whatever he rolled out of bed in, and if he's not also the town barber or undertaker, count yourself lucky you're lawyer. If you're lucky, it's someone who once read half a book on legal procedure. If you're unlucky, it's just a cousin of the deputy with a mustache and a loud voice. Either way, they'll say something about justice. You'll nod like you understand, and then they'll spend the rest of the hearing trying not to fall asleep. The prosecution. That's whoever's angriest at you. Maybe it's the store owner you accidentally insulted. Maybe it's the sheriff's cousin's friend's neighbor, who swears he saw you steal a mule. Though come to think of it, that mule never existed. Evidence, optional, witnesses, unreliable. The only real deciding factor is who the judge had breakfast with, and whether you happen to look guilty in the right light. Sometimes the verdict feels like a coin flip, except the coin's crooked, and the guy flipping it already made up his mind. You plead your case, voice shaking, dirt still under your nails from jail, and the judge just squints at you like he's deciding whether to sentence you or ask for lunch. And then comes the ruling. If it goes your way, congratulations. You're free, but not clean. You still smell like confinement and desperation. The town watches you walk out, half expecting you to drop dead or get arrested again by sundown. If it doesn't go your way, you're headed right back to the jail. Maybe with more time, maybe with a fine, maybe with a rope appointment behind the barn at sunrise. In the Wild West, trials weren't about truth. They were about timing, reputation, and dumb luck. You could be guilty and walk, innocent and hang, or caught somewhere in the middle, sentenced to another few months of bean dinners and lice therapy. But once it's over, no matter how it ends, you feel something strange relief. At least the not knowing is done. Your fate's been rolled and tossed on the dusty table like a bad poker hand, and now you're either free to ride into the sunset or stay exactly where you are, waiting for the final chapter to play out. So the trial's over, the yelling stopped, the cards are on the table, and whatever dignity you had left is somewhere in the corner of that courtroom, still twitching. Now, all that's left is the part that matters most. Your sentence. Sometimes, miraculously, the door opens. Maybe the sheriff decides he doesn't want to feed you anymore. Maybe a fine gets paid. Maybe the judge sobers up and realizes there's no real evidence, or your paperwork gets lost in the shuffle between the saloon and the general store. However it happens, you're told, you're free. With all the ceremony of someone handing off a wet rag, no farewell, no apology, just a grunt and the sound of the key turning. You stumble out into the light, blinking, disoriented, wearing the same lice-ridden clothes you came in with. You haven't seen the sun in weeks, your beard itches. Your knees barely work, but you're free. And out here, that's better than rich. Other times, freedom never comes, because sometimes the sentence is death. They don't dress it up much. No months on death row, no appeals. Just a date, a rope, and the understanding that you've officially outlived your usefulness. The gallows might already be built, weathered wood in the center of town, or someone might just pick out a sturdy tree behind the jail. Either way, the rope finds your neck just the same. You're paraded out in irons, flanked by deputies who won't look you in the eye. The townsfolk gather, chewing tobacco and squinting into the sun, like they're watching a show. The preacher recites something soft and trembling. The sheriff asks if you have final words. Most don't. Some cry. A few curse. One man once tried to sing "Home on the Range." He didn't make it to the second line. The rope tightens. The trap drops. The crowd leaves. That's justice. But not everyone gets a trial. Not everyone gets a sentence. Some men die in the cell, quietly, violently, or with a bucket tipped over beside them. Maybe they were too sick. Maybe someone lost their temper. Maybe the sheriff just forgot they were there. Others disappear without explanation. One morning, they're gone. No goodbyes, no notice. The bed's empty, the cell's clean. The deputies don't answer questions. Maybe they were transferred. Maybe they escaped. Maybe they just stopped existing the way prisoners sometimes do in places like this. And then there are the lucky few who get out by way of connections. A cousin rides into town with enough silver to buy your name back. A bribe changes hands behind the stables. The judge receives a mysterious letter. The next thing you know, you're out. No questions asked. Because out here, justice is flexible. It bends, it breaks, and sometimes it disappears altogether. In the Wild West, prison wasn't meant to rehabilitate you. It was meant to remove you from the streets, from the saloon, from the problem list. And if that meant through a door or through a noose, well, that's just logistics. Eventually, it ends. The cell door opens or it doesn't. The rope tightens or it doesn't. Whether you walk out or get carried, your time in the jailhouse always leaves something behind and takes something with it. You step into the sunlight, free at last, but you're not the same. You squint like a mole, your clothes hang loose, your ribs show you've aged, not in years, but in eyes. You don't smile much anymore. You don't laugh the same way. You flinch when someone slams a door too hard or lights a pipe too close to your face. And that smell, that glorious mix of sweat, mold, old beans, and low-level psychological collapse, it follows you, clings to your skin, your hair, your memories. You could scrub in a river for a week and still smell the jailhouse when the wind shifts. You swear you can still hear the bucket sloshing, and that one guy snoring like a dying mule, even if you made it out clean. No whipping, no hanging, no missing toes. You've still lost something you're not sure you can name, something that doesn't grow back. People in town look at you differently. Some cross the street, some nod politely but don't ask questions. You're a man who's been inside, and that's not just a location, it's a condition. Jail marks you in ways a bullet doesn't. Quiet, invisible scars. You carry them in your posture, in your silences, in the way you count how many people are standing behind you at all times. And yet, for all the filth and fear and crawling insanity you survived, you did your time, whatever that meant. You kept your head down or up or somewhere in between. You listened for keys, fought for food, and slept with one eye open and one hand on your boots. That's something. That's everything, because jail in the Wild West wasn't about learning your lesson. It wasn't about rehabilitation or reflection. It was about containment. You went in so the town could sleep easier. You stayed until they forgot why they put you there, or until they remembered. The building may fall apart. The sheriff may drink himself into retirement. The jail might burn down or get turned into a post office. But you'll never forget the experience. You'll always remember the stink, the dark, the waiting. You'll remember Toothless Jake and the bucket, and that one fight over a bean that ended in a broken wrist and a new nickname. And you'll carry that with you always. Because the Wild West jail wasn't just a place. It was a test, a crucible, a slow, rotting furnace. that burned the softness out of you and left behind something tougher. Or nothing at all. Maybe you got thrown in for stealing a horse. Maybe just for looking like you might. Either way, once that door shut behind you, your name didn't matter. Your story didn't matter. You were just another body sweating on the floorboards, scratching at lice, and praying the stew didn't kill you. And sure, some walked free. Some bought their way out. Some slipped through the cracks, literally. But most, they just endured, day by day, with the stink, the bucket, the silence, until someone else needed the space or forgot you were there. The walls didn't care who you were. The sheriff didn't either. And that scar on your shoulder, that came from a man who once sang lullabies through his teeth before he tried to bite your nose off in the dark. Now you're out. Or maybe just dreaming of it. Either way, you'll never forget what it meant to live behind those bars, because jail out here wasn't just a sentence, it was a brand. And no matter how far you ride, no matter how many towns you pass through, there'll always be a part of you that still flinches at the creak of a cell door and the smell of cold beans. Thanks for surviving this with us. Now dust off your boots and try not to look back.